Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the PDRS channel. Today we're going to take a look at the ARCA car around Las Vegas Motor Speedway.
At night.
The track lends itself to some pretty good racing. You can kind of experiment with different grooves. You can try the higher side, the lower side, kind of race where you're comfortable. I've had some good battles. It is pretty challenging to actually pass when you get next to somebody. So that's something to be aware of. I'd say it's a pretty fun track. The car is pretty on edge for most of the race, especially at the beginning and at the end. In the middle, if you're driving the car right for like keeping race pace, it will tend to neutral out, so it won't really be too tight or too loose. But then as you get near the end of the race, it'll loosen up or tighten up again, depending on how you're driving. There are some bumps in the bottom of turn one. They can kind of throw you off a little bit and kind of like maybe in that upper bottom lane. So that's something to be aware of, especially on race starts. It gets a little sketchy. Because in my experience, what happens is you'll go into the corner and you'll feel like the car's going to hook in pretty nicely, and you throttle it back up, and then it just snaps. So you got to be aware of that, and that can kind of happen mostly in the bottom couple lanes. It doesn't happen so much if you're running in the upper lane because the car's already loose, so it's not really going to snap on you. So let's take a look at the track map, shall we? So looking at it, it's kind of your standard mile-and-a-half oval. Uh, this one does not have progressive banking like we've seen in previous weeks, so um, that's not a factor. But typical with these shaped tracks, your corner entry into turn one is kind of wide, and it tends to close off a little bit as you go into exit turn two. You'll feel that wall come up kind of quick. And then in turn three, your entry is a little bit sharper, and then the track kind of widens out, so you can let it track out towards the wall on the exit of turn four more than you can on the exit of turn two. So you do have to drive them a little bit differently. We've seen that plenty of times. I'm sure you all know what the deal is with that now. There are some bumps at the bottom of turn one, kind of like as you get towards the apex of the corner into into turn two. You'll find a couple bumps down there that might unsettle the car. Sometimes it feels like it's going to really unsettle it, but the car stays pretty gripped up. And then other times it can just kind of snap. So be aware as you go through that corner. If your car feels really twitchy, just don't get back to the throttle that early. Maybe roll through those bumps and then throttle back up, and you should be okay. And then you can kind of let the car track out towards the wall on your exit of turn two. Um, Turn three, the whole back straightaway is pretty easy. And then heading into turn three, you do have some options here. You can take one of the upper lanes to gain some momentum off of the corner, or you can take the bottom lane to take some distance out of your lap. Either way kind of works, I've found. Um, and what I kind of like to do is switch it up as I'm racing. So I might stay on the bottom for 2 laps. I might run a lane or two up for a couple laps. And I'm just trying to evenly use my tires so that I'm not really just killing the right front or killing the right rear. That way I can keep pace throughout the whole entire race. Which brings me to my next point of race pace. Um, if you're a little bit off on qualifying, like maybe say 3/10 of a second off, that's all right. Race pace is about maybe 3/10 a lap slower than what people qualify at. If you're running qualifying laps, you're not going to last very long. You might pull away at first and then give it maybe 5 or 6 laps, and everybody's going to start running you back down. So um, that is a nice little fact that evens the playing field. So you don't have to be, all out hot lapping God to do well here. Which is good for me too, because people are putting down some just stupid fast qualifying laps, and I don't know how they're doing it. So kudos, hats off, helmets off to any of you drivers that can set some of the crazy fast laps this week. So what do we like to do for brake bias and steering ratio? Brake bias here does not matter. You're not really using the brakes at all, at least I'm not. You could drag the brake later on in the run to try to set your car into the corner, but the one thing that you should not be doing is use the brake to slow down the car. The best way to get into the corners here is to kind of let the car roll through and let the turning take off some of that last bit of speed. Steering ratio, I'm found that I prefer 14:1 for the same reasons that I usually do. It gives me a quick enough steering box where I can put the car where I want it, but it gives me enough kind of play with the steering wheel that I can hold the car at a little bit of a slip angle throughout the corner, which is really important, especially if you want to run any of the like second or third lane up. All right, so now you got some knowledge about the track and the car. So let's go ahead and take a look at our qualifying lap, and then we'll do our talking and chit-chatting about it right after that. And coming across the line for 31.207, I've seen some people in the O's. I don't know how they're doing it. But so to begin our out lap, we don't go full tilt. I kind of stayed about 150 miles an hour just to get the tires warm, and then firing out of turn 3 and 4 to actually start a qualifying lap, you're going to want to hang around the top side to carry as much momentum as you can out of that corner. You're going to cut the track a bit to take some distance out of your lap and take a little bit of time out of it. And then looking here between this symbol right here and somewhere in between this cup sign, that's where you want to kind of start your turn in. And you can really see the bumps that we're talking about in the slow motion getting down into the corner. And pay attention to the throttle. So we're just a little over half throttle, and we're kind of being real patient with it to get the car to hook up, and right around the apex, then we'll try to get back to full throttle. Then fire it out. You might have to fight with it on the way out of the corner and just barrel down the Nellis straightaway as fast as you can. Now looking for our yellow sign on the right is about where you want to start your turn in. You'll keep some throttle on briefly and drive it down into the corner. You'll feel the back of the car start to get a little bit loose with you. That's when you let out of the throttle and kind of let it grip back up. And you can see once again we're being really patient with when we get right back to the throttle. And we try to fight with it and feed it in, and then we get back to full throttle and drive it out. Car's going to get loose, so be prepared for that. And then cross the start finish line to set your lap. So now that we've talked through the lap, we can say that that last little bit there sums up how the track drives and feels. It feels pretty loose when you're driving really, really aggressively. Your corner entry feels pretty loose until you have to let out of the throttle, and then it kind of tightens back up or sits neutral until you get back to the throttle again, and then it kind of kicks loose. And that happens pretty much all the way throughout the track until you get a few laps in and kind of get everything heated up. Then it kind of balances out for a little while, like we talked about at the beginning of the video. And speaking of having to back out of the throttle, if you carry the throttle deep into the corner and then back your foot out of it really fast, the car kind of tends to snap around, especially if you're on some of those bumps. But there are a couple cases where easing out of the throttle can save you, kind of like this example. You can see that we backed out of the throttle, let the rear tires grip back up, and then we're good to continue. And the last little thing that I want to share today is the driving the top side of the track. It can be a little bit tricky, but it pays off because you carry so much more momentum out of the corner. Now heading down into turn 3 is easier. The banking kind of works with you, and you just have to let out of the throttle for just a second to let the car kind of hook in, and then you're good to gas it back up. Turn 1, though, is a bit different. It might be kind of hard to see in the video, but you can really feel it if you're driving it. On your corner entry coming up right in this area here, there's a little bit of a hump where the car goes up and back down. And on its way back down, you don't have a lot of front end grip. And if you're on throttle, you can kind of feel like the car wants to come around. So I usually back out of the throttle before I get to that point and let the car roll through there. And then once it settles back down into the turn, you're good to gas it back up and take off. And we ever so gracefully kiss the wall right there, which is a danger of running the top side. So everybody, that's what I've got for this guide. Thank you so much for watching. Once again, I really appreciate you all being here. We're about to hit 200 subscribers, y'all. This is pretty awesome. So thank you. I genuinely appreciate it. It makes it a lot more fun when I get to make these and have people watch them and hopefully get something out of them. So I hope you learned some more tricks for the track that you can use this week. Go out there and have a good time. Experiment around with some lines. And good luck in your races. I'll talk to you all soon. Have a good one.